Parshas Balak. This parsha is a very unique parsha, and it's something that we have a goy who gives the praise of the Jewish people, and that stands as a hallmark of the praise of what the Jewish people are, that to a certain extent we take some of the things that he said and we set them up for ourselves to remind ourselves of who we are and what we are. And very inspiring parsha. There's so much. I decided to concentrate on the first part. We know the first part of what Balak does after he comes to Bilam. After what Bilam does after he comes to Balak. Balak, the king of Moab, sends for Bilam to go ahead and curse the Jewish people. Bilam comes, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts words in his mouth, but it's not the words of Hashem completely. It's that Bilam is inspired, and Hashem makes it that he has to express those inspirations that he has. He has to say the things that struck him about the Jewish people. Okay? And the first thing he does is, he says, set up mizbeh, 7 mizbachot, right? And bring karbanos on them. So Rashi says, what was he doing this for? Because the Avos brought 7 times, they brought karbanos. And so Bilam says, I'm doing exactly what the forefathers of this nation did, so that I am setting myself up in a position that I'm able to go ahead and stand against the traditions of this nation. And the idea certainly has to be that Bilam was trying to say, I'm taking all the positive energy that the Avos produced and presented before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm going to use all that positive energy to be able to present myself before Hashem so that I can go ahead and express myself regarding the Jewish people. This is something which is very important as on its own, which is that very often the nations around us try to set themselves up as morally on a par of the Jewish people. Okay? And this is the first step of what they're trying to do against us. And that's what we have to recognize. When you have the world court at the Hague, who is putting up a trial, and the world accepts this. The world goes along with it. Why is that? Because that's the first step in which they're trying to say, we're going to undermine what the Jewish people stand for. How? By saying, we are righteous. We are good people. And it's a farce. And that's the first farce we have to be aware of. And of course, Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't accept it. Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't give that any weight. And then he comes back and he opens up and he says, Min Aram Yancheni Balak Melech Moab, Meharei Kedem. He brings me from Aram. He's bringing me from the same source that the Jewish people came from. He wants to show, I'm going to bring somebody who can stand up against them in the very foundations of what the Jewish people stand from. Meharei Kedem, from the mountains of yore, those great mountains that produce everything. Come and curse the Jewish people. What does he mean? So I think that according to some of the Mefarshim, the idea is that Bilam is saying, he wanted me to say that, you know what? I'm going to go back to the forefathers of the Jewish people. I'm going to find some basic foundations that are not so strong. Something that's not as good, not solid. And I'll use that as to find a crack in the foundations of the Jewish people. And then I can go ahead and attack them. But he says, you know what? I couldn't find anything. Because mo'ekav lo kavokel, what can I do when God himself doesn't find any fault in them? Hashem doesn't find a fault in the beginnings of the nation. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't find a fault, then what is there for me to talk about? Right? Hashem looks at our foundations. Hashem looks back to the basic building blocks of the Jewish nation. Right? Those big high mountains. And Hashem says, I'm not interested. But I think there's a deeper thing too. And that is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, and this is something which is extremely important for us in life. Very often, people build themselves up. Look what I did. I did X and Y and this, and I built this up, and I built that up, and I did this, and I did that. And you know what? Hashem says, I'm not interested in what you did in the past. It's very nice. It's a big schus. But you know what's important? Hashem says, Ki mirosh tsurim arenu. I want to go up to a small mountain, a small rock. I want to look at what you're doing now, right here, very close by. I don't want to look at the great mountains of the past. The past was very nice. There can be kinks in it, and there can be positive. But you know what? Ultimately, it's not what makes a difference. What makes a difference is, what are you now? What are you doing right now? But one more step. Bilam continues and he says that, we can look at the dirt of the Jewish people. The dirt is the idea of the foundation that will bring up future. Let me see what the future will bring. Umisparis Rova Yisrael. And let me see if I can dissect and see the different portions of the nation so I can see what's going to be in the future. Tamos nafshim mosi sharim yisiach risi kamo. I want to concentrate on what's the end. But that also is not important. Because Bilam, he was looking at past and he's looking at the future. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he understood from the few sentences in the middle, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, neither of those are what are important. What's important is, what are you doing now? Hashem says, I want to see what you are now. And when Klal Yisrael looks at what they're doing now, when we understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking at us and what he's really interested in seeing is what we do now, then that is what will make the past become important and the future important. But they are not important by themselves. What's important, the main issue that we have to concentrate on is, what am I doing now? That will be the justification, and that will be the building blocks. But it's got to be a concentration, or Merosh Tzurim, from the rock. Now, what I do now is going to make all the difference. And if we learn that lesson, if we concentrate on doing now, it gives us a very, very meaningful and a life that can become the basis for everything that we want to have come to us in the future.